my personal views. Someone else may have another opinion. To me, one of the top priorities for this COP is drought. This phenomenon is sparing no country, no biome. Amazon forest is burning. The Philippines were hit by droughts for the first time this year. So it is no longer only happening in dry areas, it is happening in boreal forest, and as you know, forests in Canada are burning. So it is certainly one of the topics that we will be discussing here. It is on the agenda, and it is most likely going to be the most difficult topic in the negotiations. Second is land restoration. We have already degraded 40% of the land in the earth, in the world. So we have a reservoir of 1.5 billion hectares of land that can be put back to health, to help produce the food that we need, and to help provide us with the clean water that we need, and to also help us have the clean air that we need. So as you know, all three elements are coming from the land. Why this is important? Because we need to produce twice as much food as of now by 2050 to feed a growing population and a growing middle class in the world. So how can we do that if we have shrinking resources and the land has already, we have already lost 40% of the productive land in the world? We have to restore degraded land and put it back to health. My third priority, from my point of view, is financing. And this is a topic that is extremely important, not only in terms of how much money do we need to mobilize from governments and the private sector, but actually how many resources and where can we find the financing in the world that can help us turn the tide. The numbers we are talking about are big, so it is unlikely that the public sector alone will be able to address these priorities. We are talking about the needs worth $1 billion per day to come up with the resources that are needed to restore the $1.5 billion hectares of land by 2030. So what can we do? According to our own data, up to close to 70% of the needs right now are provided by domestic resources in terms of land restoration. 22% coming from ODA, official development assistance, and only 6% coming from the private sector. So we need to certainly increase the contribution from the private sector for themselves. We are not talking about charity, we are talking about investments, so that the private sector that is producing food or cotton or doing mining actually invest in their own land, invest in their own business in order to secure their production and to make sure that their activities are maintained for a long period of time. So financing is the third priority, and I think if we address these three, there may be multiple other priorities for other colleagues, but it is important for me that drought, land restoration, and financing are addressed properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chow. So we've heard about the priorities of drought resilience, land restoration, and financing from the perspective of the Secretariat of the Convention. Now let's turn to the host country, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And on behalf of the COP presidency, Dr. Osama, please tell us your vision and your expectations for this momentous COP.
Thank you. I will make my remarks very brief. Again, you know, Saudi Arabia hosting this COP came, due to a firm belief of the importance of conserving environment as the third pillar for sustainable development. We cannot achieve sustainable development and achieve economic growth and social welfare without conserving environment and natural resources. And this has been translated very vividly in Saudi Arabia Vision 2030 and the transformation that we have seen since 2016. On the environmental front, we have the adopted the National Environmental Strategy, Saudi Green Initiative, restructuring the whole environmental sector, establishing an environmental fund, one of the largest in the region, 5 national environmental centers, the National Center for Waste Management, the National Center for Environmental Compliance, the National Center to Combat Desertification, the National Center for Meteorology, and the National Center for Wildlife. This is all to reflect really a deep focus on the environment. Now, as the Executive Secretary mentioned, it makes a lot of sense to host the desertification conference here in the Middle East, although Saudi Arabia and regional countries really suffer a lot from desertification and drought, but we have to remember that land degradation is global. And if it's manifested mainly here in desertification, it has different forms in terms of the loss of forest, whether it's tropical or rainforest, or the degradation of agricultural lands or range lands and others. So land degradation is global. Its impact is severe, knowing that mostly all of our food, almost 95% of our food by tonnage, 99% if we calculate it by calorie, comes from land. Our forests on land, terrestrial biodiversity are impacted severely by land. 24% of greenhouse gases are related to various land use. So whether you look at it from biodiversity or social well-being or climate resilience, it is very important. A lot of the conflicts over resources, political instabilities are associated with land degradation and loss of resources, and even migration, whether it's migrating from rural areas to cities, or migration across the border related to drought and land degradation to a great extent. Tomorrow we will have a high-level segment on the impact of land degradation on migration and political stability. So really, it intersects with many issues, and it cannot be looked at separately. And we in Saudi Arabia just announced the Riyadh Global Drought Resilience Partnership, also as a reflection of a belief that we have to strengthen the action on the ground. Although it is very important to continue the policy dialogue and to strengthen the policies both on the national level and the international level related to land degradation, desertification, drought, as well as other environmental challenges. Yet, very important drivers to achieve objectives is to have a strong action agenda that is inclusive, not only for government actors, but also we need the private sector. As the Executive Secretary mentioned, we cannot move without the private sector, because about 50% or slightly below that of the global GDP depends on the natural capital. And it is in the best interest of the long-term sustainability of the private sector to be part of the solution. Also having the women group, the youth group, the indigenous people, the NGOs and others are very important, really part of the solution. And as you can see here in the COP, we really wanted to be the COP of engagement and the COP of inclusiveness, where we really not only just focus on the government discussion on policies, but it's really engaging all stakeholders, all global stakeholders, to be part of the solution, because the stakes are high and not only impacting one dimension, but multi-dimensional impacts. I think, as Professor Johan so vividly articulated in his speech, and maybe we'll hear more from him, it is highly interlocked to the climate, to biodiversity, food security. The time to act is now. We always think about the cost. What is the cost of land restoration? But I think what is the cost of no action? Each dollar invested in land restoration give us $30 into benefits, up to $30 in benefits. So let's think about the return on investment. I think we all heard Mrs. Amina Muhammad. She was talking about the economical return of restoring 1 billion hectare of land. I cannot remember the figure, but it was like around $1.8 trillion, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was annually. So really, the cost of no action is staggering. The reward of positive action is highly, and it really has multiple positive impacts if we acted, and we get to lose a lot if we continue not to act. Again, I think here we would like to raise global awareness about the challenges associated with land degradation, desertification, drought, and we would like to also raise the ambition and the momentum and the action to drive solutions to really have a positive impact on the ground. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osama. So, of course, indeed, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia knows firsthand the impacts of desertification, land degradation, and drought, but we've also just heard some very dire warnings about what's happening at the global scale. So, Professor Rockstrom, please take us through some of the, I don't know, highlights or lowlights of what has been released today as the special report on land, please.
Yes, thank you. And it is, as my two predecessor speakers here emphasized, scientifically we can be very clear today in our communication to the world at large, but also to those gathered here at COP16, that we are following a very dangerous path. We are at a critical juncture. For the first time, we need to consider the real risk of destabilizing life support on the entire planet. We're following, as you know, a pathway that will take us, in terms of global warming, to over 3 degrees Celsius over just the next 75 years. This is a pathway that unequivocally leads to disaster. There's absolutely no scientific evidence that we can support a world population under such conditions, an environment on planet Earth we haven't seen for the past 4 million years. But the following is the key message, I would argue, when we gather here at the UNCCD, that land is a fundamental precondition that will determine whether or not we can turn this around, or whether we will continue towards potentially even a self-reinforced, unstoppable pathway towards even worse warming levels. How can I say this? Well, it's because we know that land is connected to 7 of the 9 planetary boundary systems that regulates the life support, the resilience and stability of the planet. It's directly regulating to climate change, to biodiversity loss, to freshwater stability, to the cycles, what we call the biogeochemical cycles of nitrogen and phosphorus, to the air pollutants, and to chemical loading. And these are 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries. So fix land, and we have a good chance of keeping the planet in a healthy state. If we continue losing, as Ibrahim Chow pointed out, if we continue losing 1 million square kilometers of healthy land each year, we'll be sliding even further down a negative path. Think of this also as if we're sitting on a balancing teeter, and the numbers are today at a very, very scary level. Because on one side of this teeter, we know that unsustainable land management, the way we manage agriculture, forestry, and land use, is the single largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the global economy. Roughly 23%, somewhere between 20 and 25% of emissions. On the other side of this balancing teeter, you have intact nature, which actually is absorbing roughly the same amount, in the order of 25% of carbon dioxide. So currently, we are at this point where the planet is just balancing between sliding in the wrong direction, but trying to help us to keep ourselves away from danger. But for every day we lose more intact land, we lose that capacity, and the teeter starts falling over, and we'll start sliding in the wrong direction. That's the biggest scare we have today. Of the 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries that are breached, that are outside of the safe levels, all of them are connected to land. This is what we have shown in a report that was commissioned by the UNCCD, led by the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and launched publicly here in Riyadh today. We'll have an official side event on Wednesday on this. So land is associated with breaching the climate boundary, the biodiversity boundary, the freshwater boundary, the nitrogen phosphorus boundaries, and of course the land boundary itself. This is, as was also pointed out, by my fellow COP president here, not only about droughts and desertification. I agree with Ibrahim that this is a top priority of building drought resilience, but it's for all citizens in the world. It is the boreal forest in Canada, it is the fires today we see in the Arctic region, it's the temperate forest in Europe, it's the rainforests, it's the arid lands, it's the savannas. All systems are under pressure. This report, to close, focuses on transformation pathways. What are the solutions? What can we do in terms of policies in meetings like this? It is about stopping the expansion of agriculture and infrastructure into intact land. That's like the first step to take. No more expansion. What happens here in Riyadh is therefore a critical factor to support the global biodiversity framework, but also to support the Paris Climate Agreement, because unless we can stop that expansion, it doesn't matter if we phase out coal, oil and gas, we will still breach the Paris limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Land can breach that on its own. If we do not get success in Riyadh, we cannot meet the global biodiversity framework. Land can on its own make us fail the UN CBD. So we're sitting here in a very decisive moment. But we're also exploring in this report, to close, Ibrahim Chow's point about finance. This is an area where we need major efforts in investing in regenerative agricultural land use practices, but also in conserving and protecting natural lands and investing in drought resilience, which is absolutely necessary because there will unavoidably be more droughts and more severe droughts in the coming decades. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Rockström. We will now take some questions from the media. Please, once again, raise your hands. Also, you can ask your questions in English, French, or Arabic. And we will go first to CNN. Please, may I have the microphone?
Hi, Becky Anderson from CNN. Thank you so much for this today. Ibrahim Chow, let me start with you. Can you put a total dollar figure on the amount of investment needed by the end of the decade? You've quoted $1 billion a day in financing needs, so what's the total figure? And how do you close what is currently a massive financing gap? And then to Dr. Osama, can you provide further detail on how Saudi is committed to providing leadership on land restoration and rolling back deserts? Thank you.
Thank you. The numbers may seem big, and they are big. We need $2.3 trillion by 2030. But if you look at the world as it is today, that is the budget we spent this year or last year on defense. And that is the exact amount that we are spending on environmentally harmful subsidies. So you and I, as taxpayers, are subsidizing activities that are being harmful to our environment, being harmful to ourselves, and being harmful to our land. So if we re-engineer that subsidy and reinvest it in land-friendly activities like land restoration, you will not spend more money. You will just change the way we are spending the money that we are generating today. So while doing that, we will have multiple benefits: biodiversity, climate, poverty alleviation, security, migration, reducing migration, forced migration, and so forth and so forth. So it is therefore very important that we take this as an investment on ourselves, an investment on our future, an investment on the security in the world. So it doesn't help to degrade the land, which is generating in itself more conflicts. And you know probably that there are more and more people that are fighting for more fertile land and water. And you know that most conflicts in the world have fertile land and water as a root cause. So it doesn't help to continue to degrade the land just to spend on defense in order to control, to see how much we are actually doing. So it is important that we look at our budgets in general. Of course, we need to invest massively on land restoration, but that does not mean necessarily new money. It is redesigning the way we spend money in the world today.
Thank you, Vicky. And I think it's very important for us to focus on restoring land. But I think also we have to have equal focus on preventing healthy land from degrading. I mean, this generation, I mean, in the last 500 years, we have degraded around 2 billion hectares. Now, it is reported we have this about 1.2 or so billion because only 55% of the land is being reported. We need to even improve the reporting, the monitoring, and other aspects of that. So we have 45% of the land area is not being reported because the countries are not reporting. So we have to realize the information gap. But whatever we know is already alarming. And actually, you know, the few studies, all of them, there are the varying figures, but we look at 2050, we're talking to double the land degradation rate. So we need to talk about land restoration, but also we need to focus on preventing land from degrading. And here in Saudi Arabia, we actually focusing on all activities to be environmental compliant. We have established the National Center for Environmental Compliance. We have actually updated our environmental laws. Now they are at par with the best in class. And we also have announced very ambitious land restoration targets under the Saudi Green Initiative. But also in other dimensions, like if you look at the agriculture, now we have announced the Saudi GAP, Saudi Good Agriculture Practices, issued an agriculture law, really working a lot with farmers on good agricultural practices, all this to really improve the utilization of land and move toward a sustainable land management. On the food security, we have created the National Food Security Agency. Not many countries have a National Food Security Agency because, you know, food, you not only use land, but also consume water and energy. Back in Sharm el-Sheikh, the food cycle took a lot of focus, and I remember the discussion that the food cycle from the farm all the way to the table is about 33% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So, and also we're talking about a third of our food globally is lost or wasted, lost in the production cycle or wasted after it reached the table. So we also have to really move towards sustainable consumption patterns. Here in Saudi Arabia, we have a target to cut food waste and loss by 50%. That will translate into water security, into land conservation, greenhouse gas emissions, and a lot of impact. So we need to think not only in the terms of land restoration, although it's very important, we have to think in multi-dimensions. Regionally, we announced the Middle East Green Initiative. We started by 20 regional countries. Last October, 11 countries has joined, including also UK, because in Middle East we have regional countries and non-regional countries where we want to increase this synergetic partnership to restore 200 million hectares into this region spanning from Central Asia to West Asia, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. These are the most impacted by desertification. It makes a lot of sense that those coming together. We have launched together with our partners G20 in 2020 the Global Land Initiative, and it's now working in 100 countries, and they will be really very visible and active, and you can see a glimpse of what they are doing, of the good work. And now here by hosting COP16, our main focus is to raise the global awareness and focus on land degradation issue and how it is interconnected. And we need to really have more commitment. We have 130 countries who have announced land degradation neutrality targets, but we have many countries who didn't. And many of those are actually, developed countries even. So we need more commitment. Even those countries who announce commitment, there is a lot of work to achieve the targets, because we are really, if you look to many initiatives, they are way behind the target. So we need not only government, but we need the private sector. We need the non-government actors. So this is really, it's not about working nationally, because that will not have a dent into this global challenge. يعني you need to work nationally, regionally, and globally. I think this is our message.
Thank you very much. We'll try to take a few more questions. Yes, please, lady in green.
مساء الخير، زينب علي من صحيفة الشرق الأوسط. أحب أوجه سؤالي للدكتور أسامة. من الطبيعي أن الجفاف والتصحر وتدهور الأراضي تشكل تهديدات للإنسانية. فهل تتوقعون أن يتم التوصل إلى صيغة تحمي الإنسانية في كوب 16 لا سيما وأن التمويل جزء أساسي، وإلى ماذا تتطلع السعودية من جميع الأطراف من خلال كوب 16؟
شكرا. طبعا احنا نتطلع انه يعني كاب 16 يكون نقطة تحول تاريخية في رحلة اتفاقية، يكون هناك زخم كبير. نرغب في يعني زيادة التزامات الدول بالعمل على الحد من تدهور الأراضي، إعادة تأهيل الأراضي. هناك حوالي 1.5 مليار هكتار من الأراضي المتدهورة. نحتاج عمل أكثر. أيضا نحتاج عمل أكثر طبعا في المجال التفاوضي فيما يخص إطار دولي لمكافحة الجفاف. هناك أيضا حاجة للتمويل، هناك حاجة كبيرة جدا لمشاركة القطاع الخاص، مؤسسات التمويل الدولي. هناك أيضا لمشاركة مؤسسات المجتمع المدني، لأن ممارساتنا الفردية تساهم في ذلك. الآن استهلاك الفرد حاليا في العالم هي 4 أضعاف ما كان يستهلك الفرد قبل عدة عقود من مواد أولية، من طاقة، من غيره. فلذلك التحدي هو ليس فقط للحكومات، هو للجميع. وما نطلع عليه في هذا المؤتمر هو فعلا تعزيز الزخم العالمي لهذه الاتفاقية المهمة التي تتقاطع مع التغيير المناخي، مع التنوع الأحيائي، مع الأمن الغذائي. يعني 99% من غذائنا بالسعرات الحرارية يأتي من الأرض. مع الأمن المائي، احنا استمعنا إلى البروفيسور يوهان، 50% من السحب تأتي من الغطاء النباتي، والغطاء النباتي له دور كبير في الاحتفاظ بالمياه والحفاظ على تثبيت التربة. فلذلك يعني التحدي عالمي ويحتاج إلى استجابة عالمية.
Thank you very much. Let me go to the gentleman here in the first row.
Hi, Sofiane El-Sarr from Agence France Presse. So my question is following the partial failures of COP16 biodiversity and the negotiation on plastic in Busan, I wanted to know how confident you are that the outcome of this COP will be positive.
And please specify who you'd like to respond to this question.
Sorry, my question is for the Mr. the Executive Secretary or Dr.
Or any other
Osama.
person.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are very confident that we will have a successful COP here. I think the conditions are met to have such progress. First of all, you see the facilities and the atmosphere that helps a lot in any COP. We are very confident that we have a very able COP presidency, and the Bureau will be elected this afternoon, the rest of the Bureau. We are very confident that the Riyadh Global Drought Resilience Partnership that was announced today and will continue to be announced again this afternoon and tomorrow with more announcements will set a very positive tone for this conference of the parties. And we are confident that the national focal points and the negotiators of this convention are all willing to come with a conclusion as to how we can address the issue of drought. It's less polarizing than other aspects because we are all faced with the same drama and the same situation, so we have to come up with a solution, and I'm hopeful that it will be very positive. And we also know that, you know, as was said before, we not only need to stop land degradation, but we also need to restore land that is already degraded. So it's in the benefits of everybody to do that. So we are very hopeful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Professor Rockstrom, Dr. Osama, anything you would like to add on this question?
Just to, in a way, repeat, in other words, what I said earlier, how much that is at stake, that the UNCCD gathering here in Riyadh does not have much choice. We are almost halfway into what science today calls the decisive decade of humanity's future on Earth. That sounds very dramatic. It's not as if we must solve everything by 2030, but we must bend the curves, and we must be decisively on our way back to a safe landing. And so far, we're not making any progress. And correct, the CPD meeting in Cali did not make the progress we had expected. The plastic discussions neither. I would even argue that Azerbaijan did not deliver as we needed to see in terms of the transitioning away from fossil fuels and get decisive agreements on finance for climate action. Here is an opportunity for land as the glue between all these conventions to show the direction forward, because the land agenda is sitting not only with solutions to a problem, but also with solutions towards a better outcome for prosperity, equity, and livelihoods. So this is, I think, a very pivotal moment for Riyadh to really deliver.
Thank you very much. I'll take a couple more questions. Let me go to the lady here in...
Ghadi Jouda, Arab News. My question is for His Excellency, the Deputy Minister. In the context of Saudi Arabia, what role can private investment play in funding land restoration projects? And what are the economic costs of land degradation? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the private sector need to, first of all, adopt sustainable practices, mainstream it into their really core businesses, integrate environmental protection in general, and sustainable land management in particular into the business they do. Because really, this business of like exploit land, degrade it, and then move to recover virgin land, this is not sustainable. Not environmentally, not socially, and of course not even for the business. So really, they have to be part of the solution. Definitely, by scoping their investments in infrastructure, integrating drought resilience, integrating sustainable land management, integrating biodiversity protection, integrating climate resilience into how they do that, leveraging the innovation. We are getting a lot of the innovation getting there. It needs to be mainstreams. A lot of it is cost barriers. It's not really the innovation is not there. It's not economically competitive. So it need to make the innovative solutions mainstream and not on the fringe. And of course, we need to have really visible and tangible financial contribution of the private sector in land conservation, and that will yield multiple benefits to them. Because if you invest in land, it's an investment in biodiversity, climate resilience, food security, social well-being, and the hidden costs are staggering. And we are seeing now the land degradation now is a major cause for migration and conflicts. And of course, political instability is not good for the business. So they have also to be look at it from that dimension. You asked me about the cost of land degradation. I think, there's the Economic of Land Degradation reports. It's very famous, and it took years to prepare. And the numbers are staggering. They're talking about between $6 up to $10 trillion per year of lost ecosystem services, because land provides us vital ecosystem services. And when land degrades, that does not come without a cost. It comes with a very heavy cost.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osama. So the time is not on our side. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to take 3 questions, and I will go to the panelists to give maybe one succinct answer to the question that they would like to take. So let me first go to the gentleman over there in the 4th row. Then, do we have any other questions? Yes, the lady over there. And the 1st row, please, gentlemen.
Good day, all the esteemed participants. My name is Serge, Alatra, Colombia. I'd like to quote...
Excuse me, are you with a media outlet?
Yes, from the Alatra TV, Colombia.
Okay, great.
I'd like to quote here Dr. Osama, "It's time to act is now." And as Dr. Johan said, it's for all citizens of the world, it's a decisive decade and pivotal moment. Therefore, my question is to Your Excellency Executive Secretary, Dr. Ibrahim. Moving forward to practical solutions to the droughts, clean air, food security, as was mentioned by the gentleman about the plastic issue in the oceans as well. What is your opinion on the governmental use of atmospheric water generators? How maybe it will help us in the next 2-3 years if we start taking the water from the air and do it a mainstream on the global scale? Thank you.
Thank you. Please, let's take another question right away from the lady in the third row on the right.
Bonjour à tous. Ma question s'adresse au Dr Ibrahim. J'aimerais savoir qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire pour qu'au sortir de ces travaux, nous passions à l'action pour atteindre une véritable transition écologique. Et quels sont les mécanismes que vous allez mettre en place pour accompagner les États en voie de développement dans ce combat commun?
Merci beaucoup, madame. Pourriez-vous vous présenter, s'il vous plaît?
Je suis Eliane Matingoum, journaliste camerounaise en service à la télévision nationale CRTV.
Merci beaucoup. I'll take the third question. Yes, please, gentlemen.
مساء الخير عليكم جميعا. عبد الله الروقي من صحيفة الاقتصادية. أنا عندي تساؤل لمنسوبي الأمم المتحدة وأيضا سؤال آخر للأستاذ أسامة. السؤال الأول يبدو أنه هناك تمييز في المجتمع الدولي حيال الأهمية بين موضوع التصحر وموضوع المناخ. يميل البعض لاتفاقية باريس في حين أنه يعد التصحر وتدهور الأراضي هو المشكلة الحالية لما لها تداعيات جدا خطيرة على الأجواء وعلى الأمن الغذائي وغيرها. وهذا الموضوع يقودني أنه قبل 3 عقود أجريت الأمم المتحدة اتفاقية ومعاهدة وتم اعتمادها وتستهدف كانت عدة مناطق الجافة وشبه الجافة والقاحلة بهدف إزالة التحديات اللي قد تتسبب في الأمن الغذائي. إلى أنه بعد مرور 30 عام لم يحصل أي شيء، لم يكن هناك نتائج ملموسة. لذا سؤالي، هل سبب عدم وجود نتائج ملموسة لأن القضية تتعلق بالشرق الأوسط فقط؟ شكرا.
Thank you very much. So I think we will try to take these questions. So let me start with Professor Rockström. Anything in particular on the atmospheric water generation that you might have an opinion on? Then we'll come to other speakers also to answer the questions.
Yeah, well, you're opening a big topic here. The number one scientific, which is not an opinion at all, which is evidence, which is that for every 1 degree Celsius of warming, we add physically 7% moisture holding capacity in the atmosphere. So more warming, we power up the hydrological cycle, we get more rainfall. That could sound like a good message, but unfortunately it leads to just more extremes. More extreme downpours, more droughts, more floods. It doesn't pour down in any even way. That is caused by us humans. If we go in addition to that and add even more investments in moisture engineering, very likely there are unexpected secondary impacts that will put that hydrological cycle even more out of balance and cause even more extremes. And moreover, it can destabilize the system so that you have one winner, but many, many other losers downwind. So I think what science tells us today, even though the jury is slightly out what could be accomplished, is that the precautionary principle tells us that this should be not on the table. We should not support that kind of scaling of water engineering.
يمكن أنا بالنسبة لجريدة الاقتصادية وسؤاله ماذا تم خلال 30 سنة من الاتفاقية والرأي يعني أو الوعي العام العالمي هو أقل فعلا. وأنا أعتقد وسائل الإعلام لها دور. يعني التسليط الإعلامي على هذه الاتفاقية كان ضعيف، ويجب أن نعترف. ونعتقد أن الوعي العالمي على مستوى يعني صناع القرار، أو على مستوى أفراد المجتمع، أو على مستوى يعني كافة المستويات، كان ضعيف وغير متناسب مع أهمية الاتفاقية. وأحد الأسباب هو أيضا الاعتقاد أن مكافحة التصحر هي مشكلة فقط تمس الدول الصحراوية، إنما هو في الواقع لا، هو تدهور الأراضي والجفاف والتصحر مشكلة عالمية. يمكن المناطق الجافة أكثر ظهورا المشكلة، لكن هي تمس المناطق الزراعية في جميع أنحاء العالم، تؤثر على الغابات بجميع أنواعها كما ذكر البروفيسور يوهان. فهي فهم الاتفاقية هي للحد من تدهور الأراضي والجفاف والتصحر، وإن كان العنوان الغالب التصحر. ولذلك هناك دور لوسائل الإعلام، دور كبير جدا في رفع الوعي العالمي بهذه الاتفاقية، والتي لها انعكاس على التغيير المناخي، لأنه إحنا 24% من انبعاثات غازات المسببة للمناخي هي من تدهور الأراضي، والأرض تختزن كميات كبيرة جدا من الكربون في التربة أو في الغطاء النباتي، ولها انعكاسات كبيرة. نحن نأمل أن يكون هذا المؤتمر نقطة تحول، ليس فقط على مستوى القرارات والسياسات والآليات التي تعتمد، ولكن أيضا على مستوى التسليط الإعلامي من وسائل الإعلام، وأيضا على مستوى مشاركة القطاع الخاص والقطاع الغير حكومي وغير ذلك من يعني الجهات ذات العلاقة.
Je vais peut-être répondre en français à la question qui a été posée par Madame. Qu'est-ce que nous pouvons faire et quel est le rôle particulier que l'on peut avoir pour les pays en développement, si j'ai bien compris la question. Je pense que nous avons perdu 40% des terres fertiles du monde qui sont dégradées. Donc il y a quelque chose qui ne va pas. Et il est important que nous fassions une introspection pour voir quels sont les axes majeurs d'intervention. Pour voir d'abord comment on peut régler les causes profondes de cette dégradation des terres. L'une des causes profondes, c'est que nous n'avons pas de politique très claire dans les États pour pouvoir apporter des directives et des directions claires. Par exemple, pour les compagnies d'extraction minière, on leur demande pourquoi vous faites ça dans tel pays en développement. Ils disent que la législation nationale n'est pas adéquate. Donc nous appliquons notre propre législation, puisque nous n'avons pas la directive du gouvernement. Les gouvernements eux-mêmes utilisent l'argent public pour subventionner des activités qui sont nuisibles à l'environnement, qui sont nuisibles à la terre. Donc c'est une politique mauvaise. On est en train d'investir sur la destruction de notre patrimoine naturel. Donc il va falloir changer également ces politiques. Et une fois qu'on a fixé les causes profondes, maintenant on peut arriver aux solutions qui peuvent être apportées. Et l'une des solutions que nous pensons être évidente, c'est d'abord, quand vous êtes un médecin et que vous arrivez à vous trouver quelqu'un qui saigne, vous faites la première chose, c'est d'arrêter la saignée. Donc arrêter la dégradation des terres. Et la deuxième chose que vous allez faire, c'est de poser un garrot et de voir comment vous pouvez soigner la plaie. Donc restaurer les terres est une façon de soigner les plaies qui sont infligées à la face de la planète, de manière à leur permettre de produire. Donc il y a plusieurs activités qui sont fondamentales. Il s'agit bien sûr de voir comment les financements qui sont utilisés aujourd'hui dans le monde peuvent être davantage mobilisés pour la restauration des terres, pour la production agricole, pour la sécurité alimentaire, pour réduire les migrations, réduire les conflits. Donc nous ne parlons pas d'investissement uniquement pour régénérer du végétal sur terre, ce qui est essentiel bien sûr, mais également il faut trouver des solutions pour nourrir une population croissante et pour éviter une spirale, telle que Johan l'a expliqué tout à l'heure, qui risque de nous amener très loin dans la façon dont nous avons établi nos relations avec la nature et avec la terre. Donc il y a plusieurs solutions, elles appartiennent aux États, elles appartiennent également au secteur privé, qui a un rôle majeur pour réduire cette saignée. Et elles appartiennent également aux communautés de base et aux autorités locales. Chacun a son rôle. Et elles appartiennent aussi à nous, en tant que citoyens. Je vous donne un exemple. Nous portons tous des habits et nous avons tous des garde-robes. Est-ce que nous utilisons tous les habits que nous avons sur nos garde-robes? Est-ce que nous avons conscience que les habits que nous portons proviennent de la terre? Est-ce que nous avons conscience du fait que les habits que nous portons utilisent de l'eau? Est-ce que nous avons conscience du fait que ces habits ont émis du carbone avant d'arriver au supermarché et aux malls que nous avons aujourd'hui? Regardez les malls que nous avons et combien d'habits sont superposés là-bas. Est-ce que nous avons besoin de tout ça? Donc peut-être revoir notre relation avec la nature et avec la terre et voir comment nous pouvons rationaliser à la fois la production et la consommation. Et probablement la chose la plus rationnelle, et Dr Oussama l'a dit tout à l'heure pour l'Arabie Saoudite, c'est de réduire les pertes après récolte et les gaspillages alimentaires. Vous savez, dans certains pays, les paysans les plus pauvres produisent péniblement pour juste perdre 40% après récolte, parce qu'ils n'ont pas l'énergie, parce qu'ils n'ont pas accès au marché. Et donc il y a quelque chose à faire de manière à réduire toute cette pression. On a toujours considéré que les terres pourraient continuer à produire. Non, elles ne peuvent plus.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Secrétaire Exécutif, pour cette interpellation. I believe this is all we have time for this afternoon. I would like to thank our wonderful speakers for sharing their perspectives. Just a couple of housekeeping announcements. So this actually sets us up because there will be a number of important reports launched here at this COP. Later today, the journalists will be able to get to know the World Drought Atlas, which will be released here. Tomorrow, the financial needs assessment for the implementation of the convention will also be released, and some of the figures that we've heard today about the $1 billion a day and the annual benefit from investing in healthy land is going to be detailed in that report. And then on the 4th, there will be actually a new report on fashion and land, as the Executive Secretary was just mentioning. So please keep an eye on those. You will be all receiving a media advisory at the end of the day, recapping what's going to be happening in the following days. And also we will be holding from now on daily media briefings here in this room at about lunchtime, depending on the schedule of work. Once again, a big thank you to the speakers, big thank you to all of you for your attention, and looking forward to more exciting days here at COP16. Thank you.